Yeah, let me just begin the session. So this is Biology 1, third period, September 15th. Welcome, everyone. What we're going to start with today is Mr. Bouchard is going to make sure you're all on board with Edpuzzle because some of you seem to be having trouble with that. So go take it.
Gotcha. All right, my lovelies, I'm going to share a screen here. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to share a tab. We're going to go to Edpuzzle, share my audio. So here's how an Edpuzzle works. You will click play. You should see all this at the bottom. Hit play.
Welcome to 24/7 Science. Today we'll learn to determine the independent and dependent variable using experiments from the Mythbusters. First, let's get some terms clear. There are two main types of variables in an experiment, the independent variable and the dependent variable. The independent variable is the difference between the control and experimental groups of an experiment. The independent variable is the variable changed by the scientists to test the experiment's hypothesis. The dependent variable is the thing being measured during an experiment, also called data.
Okay, so you'll notice once we get to the first question, you need to then pick. It says the independent variable is the variable that is changed and manipulated by a scientist, the variable that likes to do things by itself, the data that is measured by a scientist. If you didn't remember hearing it, you can click rewatch.
The independent variable is the difference between the control and experimental groups of an experiment. The independent variable is the variable changed by the scientists to test the experiment's hypothesis. The dependent variable is the...
All right, so now I know. I click on this. I then need to click submit. Then I click continue.
Now let's break down some Mythbuster experiments.
The next question is the dependent variable. You can always rewatch. So I'm going to say dependent variable is this, no, this. It'll tell me if I'm right. Nope, it's that. Good. So now I continue. Once you submitted, you can always rewatch to find out the right answer, but we'll tell you right there.
Experiments.
So then we continue.
Experiment
now,
1.
If we get up to here,
does adding dimples to a car increase its gas mileage? Since dimples
show
on a
you
golf
one
ball
more.
are designed to help a golf
you can
ball
always
cut through the
skip
air
the
when hit,
question
the Mythbusters
and come
decided
back
to apply this logic to a car's
later.
shape in hopes that it might increase the gas mileage.
Right here, it's not allowing, but sometimes it says skip. I don't know why. Oh, this is just me showing it. You can skip it, you can come back to it, or whatever. So, just so you know, this is how you always need to submit and then continue. When you're done the questions, you'll see at the bottom, rewatch, you'll see at the bottom whether you got it right or wrong with the red or the green.
Increase its gas mileage.
Okay,
Since
are there any
dimples on a golf ball are
questions
designed to help a
on how to do this? Some people were having trouble with these before. Anybody type a question in? I can't see the chat, or you can say it if you want to take your mic off. We'd hear your wonderful voices. No questions? None? Okay.
Ariana says hello. Hello, Ariana. You know, it really means a lot to us when you kind of greet us when you come into class. We really love that. So if you want to chat us a good morning, or even open up your mic and say, hey, good morning, guys. There's also down the center of your screen, there's a person with a green check mark next to him. If you toggle that up, you could also let us know how you're doing by just picking the emoji that goes with your feelings. Hey. Hello, Luke and Sarah, Catherine, Ariana. Hey, Rob. Adriana, thank you. Sometimes we feel like we're sitting here and we're talking to ourselves. It's really nice when you guys let us know.
Thank you. We are doing well.
We like that.
There we go, Sophia.
Hello, Elizabeth, Iris, Emily, Alexander. Full of energy. Wow. Awesome. We have some things to do with that energy today. Okay. So, are we ready to go on, Mr. Bouchard?
Are there any questions again with everybody that was dead, Walking Dead? Was any questions about the Edpuzzle again? All right. Miss Murdock, I leave the floor to the wonderful Murdock. And FYI, if you see my voice moving, guys, and you hear nothing coming out, yell to me to check my mute, because sometimes I mute it because I have the windows open, so that if they're working outside, but I don't want to interrupt Miss Murdock's talk.
Mhm.
I'll be
Okay.
monitoring that.
Okay, so you should all be able to see the screen on practice tables and graphs.
Yep.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to model for you how to make a graph using Google Sheets, which you're going to need to do as your homework assignment, and also how to write a claim and evidence and reasoning into your Google Sheets. So this is just a sample experiment that's a lot like the one that you did in the last ed puzzle where I was talking about my puppy and how the puppy was gaining weight. This one's a little bit more complex. So if we read it, it says, a study was conducted to see how 2 different types of foods affected the mass of puppies during their first 8 months of life. Well, 14 months of life. I should change that. On the first day of every month, puppies were weighed in kilograms. One group of puppies were given only food A, which was high in carbohydrates. The other was given only food B, which is high in proteins. The masses of the puppies were taken over 14 months and collected into this table. So here we have the data. We have age in months. We have the mass of the puppies that were eating food A each month, and the mass of the puppies eating food B each of those months. So now you're going to create a graph. So whenever I give you a data table, I'm always going to make it so the column to the far left is going to be what you're going to want on your x-axis. And then the columns to the right of that column are going to be what are going to appear on your y-axis. And the computer will read it that way if you do it exactly the way I showed. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on age and months and highlight the top titles of the data and then drag down and highlight all of the data beneath them. So now all of your data is highlighted. The information that you want the computer to graph is now highlighted. And you notice I didn't highlight the title of the table, but I did highlight the labels of each column. Okay, so now it's highlighted in such a way that the computer is going to be able to take it and make a graph for you. This is how you do that. Watch how the arrow goes up to insert. And then you click open that menu. You got a bunch of things there. You're going to go down to chart, which is their way of saying graph. Okay, you're going to click on chart and it makes a graph for you. Now, when it makes a graph, what appears over here is a chart editor. This wasn't here before. If you look at that, chart editor. Now, I'm going to show you how to pull up the chart editor if it goes away on you. So I'm just going to exit out. And then over here where you have the graph, there are 3 dots here. If you click that open, you can go back into the chart editor. You can also delete the chart if you don't like it and you want to. Okay? But right now we're going to go back into the chart editor, and there it is. There's my chart editor. All right. So before we go any further, what do you think the independent variable, the IB of this study is? Mr. Bouchard, you'll have to look in the chats to help me with this.
Yep.
What is the scientist manipulating here?
The food.
Wow. You guys are hot stuff. Yes, that's very good. You know, a lot of students think that it's the age and months, the IV, but in fact, it's not true in this case. The actual thing that the scientist is manipulating is the type of food. You guys are so great. That's awesome. So your age and months is just a marker for your x-axis because you're measuring the change in the puppy's mass over time eating those 2 different foods. But your IV is not time. Your IV is actually the type of food. Right. Okay. So then what's your DV?
Ooh, I'm waiting.
In this case?
What are we measuring? What are we measuring?
What is depending on
the
here?
weight, the mass.
Yes, the mass of your DV. You guys are awesome.
Great.
Wonderful. Okay. So keeping that in mind, now let's go over here and because we have to finish this graph. It's not finished yet. If you turn the graph in, you would lose points. The first decision you have to make in any graph is the type of graph, this is a line graph that they've given you here, is the type of graph the right type of graph to go with the data they gave you? So if you look at the chart editor and set here, and right beneath the first thing under setup is something called the chart type. And if you click this open, it gives you choices of what type of graph you want to use. So right now it's on line graph, right? But if I click this one, it turns it into a bar graph. If I click this one, it turns it into a scatter plot with points that aren't connected. And you can even go down and use this one here to go down. And there are other types of graphs to go for. You could even make this into a pie chart, which for this data I wouldn't recommend because that makes no sense at all. You would only want to use a pie chart if you're looking at like the parts of a whole. Like if you had a group of students and they had different grades on a test and you want a percentage of who got an A and who got a B, who got a C, that might make a good pie graph, but this would not. So let's go back up to the original thing they gave us. All right. So what do you think? Do you think that, let's look at the three choices that I think I would go with here. Do you think that you would want to keep this a line graph, or would you want to do a bar graph, or is this better as a scatter plot? Why don't you chat to us which one you think is the best? You have something changing over time here, a mass of changing over time, line, bar, scatter.
Ooh. Everybody said line.
Oh, you guys are awesome. You guys are so smart. That's great. Yes, a line graph is the best here because a line graph is the type of graph you want to use if you do have something changing over time, or if you have something that is on the x-axis that is connected, right? So that the point can be connected because the 4-month mark has something to do with the 2-month mark, right? Okay. So very good.
Ms. Murdock, Luke said line graph because it's quantitative data. Be careful with that because quantitative data can also be a bar graph.
Yes. Yes.
I don't want you to. I just wanted to change that thought real quick. Quantitative, quantitative just deals with numbers. You could still be using quantitative data and have a bar graph. So don't think that, Luke. Sorry.
Yeah. It's okay. That's good thinking. I'm really proud of the fact that you used the word quantitative. Excellent. Good job with that. So a bar graph would be if you had, if you were comparing things, like if instead of looking at what's changing over time, you were comparing the population of people in different cities or something like that, where one population really has no connection to another, so you would want different bars for each city, right? And whoever was saying quantitative, I think I understand that if your IV was different cities, that's not quantitative. You're correct about that. So in some cases, you're going to have bars for different cities, which are not numbers. They're city names, right? Okay. All right, so that's good. Now, the problem with this graph is it's really not finished. If you turned it in like this, yes, the data is correct, and yes, you have lines that are correct, and the scale, the computer did all that for you. But this title up here is not a good title for a graph. So now we need to go to customize. See where my arrow is going? Now I'm going to go to customize, and I'm going to go down to chart and axis titles and click that open. So now you have another little choice bar where you can look at your chart title. You can add a chart subtitle if you want, and you can also make sure that your axes, your horizontal axis, which is the flat one, and your vertical axis, your y-axis, which is the upright one, are both labeled. So let's start with chart title. And the text of the title is right here, and you can type right in here. So right now, I don't like mass of puppies eating food A and mass of puppies eating food B does not tell me anything about what I need to know about this graph. So I am going to get rid of that and just erase all of that and start over. Okay, so now I'm going to show you exactly how to write a title for any graph we do.
Ooh.
I'm going to start with the effect of. Always starts with those words. And then the next thing you write, depending on what graph you're doing, you're always going to write the IV next. So what did we say the IV was for this?
Well, Luke already came up with a name, Miss Murdock.
Did you really?
Yeah, he said the of food on the mass of puppies.
That is exact. Wow, Luke, you are a superstar. That's exactly it. Okay, so type of food is the IV. That's right, on the mass of these. And then I'm also going to add over 14 months because that makes a nice complete title. Okay, good. So that's a good chart title. All right. So now, now that my chart title is done, let's check the other ones. The horizontal axis already says age in months. That's fine. We're going to leave that alone. We're going to leave that because that's a very good axis title. So the horizontal axis title is done. The vertical one, though, is not there. So we need to add one. So the vertical axis is where the DV, or dependent variable, goes. So what was our dependent variable again?
See what we say. See what we say. I know it. I'm waiting for somebody to put it in the typer. The mass. Mass. Yes.
Okay. Mass of puppies. And what's the unit?
Ooh. It's kgs, kilograms.
Excellent, you guys got it. All right, and you now have a complete graph. That would get you an A for the graph part. All done. So the next thing that's going to be asked of you, though, is to write a claim, evidence, reasoning. So I've already written a claim here. I'm just going to let you see it. For this particular study, if I'm looking at this graph, the claim is a single sentence that says what the IV is doing to the DV according to your data. So as time goes on, the puppies eating food B are gaining mass faster than the puppies eating food A. Is a perfectly good claim that goes with this data. Yes?
Yes. A conclusion. Yes, Luke, like a conclusion.
Like exactly that, except that the claim is just the very first part of the conclusion. The second part of the conclusion is called evidence. This is a claim evidence reasoning problem. Okay, so we have a claim that the puppies eating food B are gaining mass faster than puppies eating food A. The evidence part is now you specifically look at the graph, look at the data, and state which parts of the graph and the data are supporting your evidence, right? So the hard data is what your evidence is. My evidence is that graph shows that the puppies that ate food B, I'll just go right to the end. Look over here at 14 months, that line is higher than the line for the puppies that ate food A. Okay, so that is a qualitative description of the lines, which is fine. You can say the slope here is higher than it is there. That's fine. You also want to be quantitative in your evidence. So if I were going to be quantitative, down a little bit, down here, whoop, there, and I'm just going to continue, evidence continue. And I'm just going to say at month 10, right? For example, at the 10th month, or maybe the 14th month. At the 14th month, the red line, which is the B food line, is 3 kilograms higher than the A food line. So I'm just going to say that. At 14 months, the puppies that ate food B are 3 kilograms heavier than the ones that ate food A. Okay, you're with me?
They seem like it. Yep.
Okay.
Nobody said anything.
Okay, so there's claim, there's evidence, right? Reasoning is the last thing that you're going to write. And reasoning is generally the harder one. Most students have the hardest time with this one. So now, what you're really asking here, you need to explain reasoning is, why is it that the puppies that ate food B are growing faster than the puppies that ate food A? So this is where you might have to do a little bit of research. You might have to actually look some things up to explain this. So I'll just tell you that the B food, right? The B food have protein in it. Protein in it. While the A food had carbohydrates. Now, I don't expect you to know anything about these two things yet. This is going to be the unit that we do next.
Yeah.
Proteins and carbohydrates. But what I will say is that proteins are molecules that are really good at helping to build muscle and bone. And when puppies are growing, they do need a lot of protein because they are growing their muscles and bones. That's how they're getting bigger. Carbohydrates are also very important. They're very good for energy, and they can be converted into all kinds of things, but they're less good at building body structures like muscles and bones. So to write a good reasoning, that's what I would have to explain. The why and the how of the reason why that red line is higher than the blue line, I have to explain using what I know from my science or using what I can find information-wise in the textbook or in other places, or asking Mrs. Murdock or Mr. Bouchard about it, right? So the reasoning is the part that really should be the longest because you should be explaining it. So I'm just going to keep going here. Proteins are known to be good molecules for building muscle and bone tissues. Sorry. So it makes sense that the puppies on protein improve because they need builder molecules for their growing muscles and bones. Continue. Carbohydrates are great energy,
Ooh.
but less good for building body tissues.
Luke Hoffman, brilliant. I like what he's thinking. Miss Murdock said, what about exercise? What if B got more or less than A?
That would be an extra variable. Hopefully, remember we talked about experimental design. That's a really great question. You would want to have the amount of exercise these puppies are getting, you would want that to be a constant because you wouldn't want it to be an extra variable that might be contaminating the purity of the difference between the two foods. So hopefully, both of these groups of puppies are getting about the same amount of exercise. And that would be a constant for them. The breed of the puppy should be the same too. But yeah, that's a really good question. But that's claim and evidence and reasoning. Now let me go to classroom. You should be able to follow me here. Okay.
Frozen.
So, can you see?
Yeah, I'm good now. It just glitched for a second.
Okay, so I'm in your classwork folder, and you're going to go down here to Unit Science 1 Skills, okay? All right. The first thing I want you to do is, well, we're going to take a break in a minute. But after you take the break, you're going to do an ed puzzle of me explaining claim, evidence, reasoning. So that's the first thing you do. Go in there, click on there, and remember Mr. Bouchard explained about how to do ed puzzles, so use that and do your best. I am not grading you on accuracy for ed puzzles, okay? I just want you to get in there and do the best that you can. If you get a couple wrong, I'm still going to give you a 10 out of 10. Right, so we're grading for effort on this. If you really blow it, we'll give you an opportunity to do it again, because we do want you to actually get at least like a 65. But if you get an 86 or something like that, we're still going to give you full credit. So do that first, and then you're going to spend time in class doing this. This is the homework. The ed puzzle is homework, and so is this. The graphing assessment, where you're going to get a Google Sheet that looks a lot like the practice one I was just using, and you'll open it up, and you'll get some data and the description of an experiment. There it is. There's the description of the experiment. There's some data. And then down here, you'll have to graph, and it tells you what to do. Create a graph of data that is well labeled, titled, and shows the data correctly with the right type of graph. And then number 2, double click on the box below and write a well-written claim evidence reasoning. Okay, watch the Edpuzzle first. So if I double click on this, then I can go in here and type up my claim and my evidence and reasoning, and then save and close when it's your best work. So don't submit until you really feel like it's your best work, because this graph and the claim evidence reasoning I am going to grade for accuracy. This I am going to grade for accuracy. So definitely, you messed up, I'm sure. Okay.
I didn't touch it at all.
All right. Okay. Stop share. All right. So that is the plan. That is the plan. Absolutely, yes. Well, we're not going away. Class isn't over. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to take a brief 5-minute break, go and get away from your screen and stretch. When we come back, you're going to watch the Edpuzzle, and you're going to have time to work on this graph in class with our help. Okay? But right now, I seriously want you to take a break. Okay, yes. So I'm going to put a lovely 5-minute timer on the screen. And you should go take your break, and I'll share that with you. And yeah, go do some dancing.
I'm going to be dancing.
Okay, here we go. Go take a break. Okay. All right. Welcome back. Here we are. Before I send you into the ed puzzles and all of that, I think I'm going to go ahead and start the breakout rooms now, Mr. Bouchard. How's that sound to you?
And guys, if you have questions in there and we're sharing something, please turn on your mic to ask, because we always see the chat. If Miss Murdock and I are sharing something and we hear the bloop, 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 the fill in from like what's happening? What's being said? But please turn on the mic if you have a question. And the 3 groups we're going to have are me and Miss Murdock and 2 separate ones. Then we're going to have one where if you want to work alone. However, if you want to work alone and you have questions, you can always pop into ours to ask. It's going to be, and then later on, depending on how we go, I will judge whether I have enough time to do. Oh, you're going to post that up again, Miss Murdock?
Yeah.
And then I'll maybe do a Kahoot today. I can't promise because last period, a lot of people have questions because the first one I wanted to help them with that. So, sorry. Go on, Miss Murdock, with your bad self.
No. I just wanted to make sure you had this information. These are the 3 types of graphs that you might want to choose. Hold on, not done yet. So line graph, you know really well. You guys got that. When something is changing over time, the puppies that grew during those 14 months, that was data that was good to use a line graph for. A bar graph is when you're comparing unrelated groups to each other. So like, for example, the population in different, oops, no, I can't spell anymore, different cities would be a good example of something that would lend itself well to a bar graph. A scatter plot may not be something that you are really familiar with, but like a scatter plot is when you have 2 different variables and you want to see, like for 30 different students, right? And each student was asked to give 2 pieces of data. One piece of data was how many hours they spent playing video games, and the other piece of data was what their test score was in their algebra class that week. Okay, so the 2 different variables and how they correlated, that's a good for a scatter plot, right? Where each person is giving you 2 variables, an x and a y, and you can't really connect them with a line, but if you look at a plot, the cloud of dots is going to give you maybe some idea with a best fit line of, whether lots of gaming really causes poor test scores or not, right? So for example, hours of gaming versus algebra test scores would be a good example for that. And I'm going to leave this on this page so you can kind of see. And it'll help you make your decision, which is a very important decision on when you open up that homework graphing thing, as far as toggling which chart type you should use. Okay, so now I'm going to make breakout groups, and this will stay in the main room. And again, like Mr. Bouchard said, the first room will be work with Mrs. Murdock if you need help, right? The second one will be work with Mr. Bouchard if you need help, and then there'll be another room where you can work alone, and you will be able to go wherever you want to go. You will be allowed to move between the groups. Remember, the first thing you should do is go to the ed puzzle and look at me explaining claim evidence reasoning. And then the second thing you do is you go to that homework graph and working on that, because that's the really great for today. All right, so I'm just going to look at groups, allow attendees to change. This group is work with Mrs. Murdock.
And guys, while we're in our groups, we won't say anything unless you have a question so that we don't distract you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I'll be there, but you need to speak up, and I might check in with the loan group once, like I did before, Miss Murdock.
Yeah, please do. But you have a choice. You can go where you want. Okay, here we go. We are leaving the breakout rooms. Remember, the first thing you should do is go into the Ed puzzle and work on that on your own. Yeah, just pick one. Sorry about that. That was a mistake. So just go into one of the Mrs. Murdock Explains CER and do that. Okay? Off we go.
All right, I'm going to
I'm
go.
going to go to work with Mrs. Murdock.
Where's the work with Mr. Bouchard? There I am. Oh, I'm out.